So the other night I was on Twitter and I saw the phrase "you voted against it" was trending. So I clicked on it and saw that one of my own beloved Texas senators was the object of this ire.
Just last week, we announced our plan to bring affordable high-speed internet to end a decade of unaffordable and inaccessible internet to every home in America, every small business in America. And to no one's surprise, it's bringing along some converts. People strenuously opposed voting against it when we had this going on. This was going to bankrupt America.
Texas Senator John Cornyn, who isn't as vocal as Ted Cruz but is still terrible, shared an article from the Texas Tribune celebrating the fact that the state of Texas was about to get a $3.3 billion federal investment in broadband internet expansion, more than any other state. Senator Cornyn did indeed vote against the federal broadband bill, the same one he's now promoting on Twitter. Senator Tuberville of Alabama is in the same boat as Cornyn, tweeting that the broadband is, quote, vital for the success of our rural communities and for our entire economy, and that it's, quote, great to see Alabama receive crucial funds to boost ongoing broadband efforts. And he's right. As President Biden said in a statement regarding this broadband expansion project, access to broadband internet in this day and age is akin to having access to electricity or running water. It's not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity. In many ways, our modern society has been built around the internet, and in many ways, society doesn't function without it. That's why whenever people try to make the argument, oh, you can't afford to pay your rent, but you have an iPhone, it doesn't make any sense. It's a bad faith argument because a smartphone is not a luxury item anymore. Yeah, it's possible to function these days without a smartphone or internet access. It's also possible to live without electricity, but it's incredibly difficult to do so, and it would require one to live a contrarian lifestyle full of inconveniences and lacking in access to a myriad of public spaces. This broadband expansion was part of a larger infrastructure bill, a bill that most Republicans voted against. These Republicans include ones who are now praising the bill, or at least parts of it, on social media. It's the same excuse that we've heard whenever similar situations have arisen in the past. Yes, they voted against the bill, but not because they opposed this particular measure. They opposed other things in the bill.
Well, there's a guy named Tuberville, Senator from Alabama, who announced he strongly opposed the legislation. Now he's hailing its passage. Here's what he said, quote, it's great to see Alabama receive critical funds to boost ongoing broadband efforts.
So on the surface, this can be taken one of a few ways. For one, senators like Cornyn and Tuberville are telling the truth. They like broadband, but didn't like other things in the bill, which is why they voted against it. To be fair, I think that can be a legitimate reason to vote against something given the circumstances. I'm not necessarily saying that that's what happened here, but it is possible. Personally, I have a hard time with binary decisions, so if I'm ever in Congress somehow, I think congressional votes like this would give me anxiety. There's also the larger issue that plagues Congress and congressional bills, where bills are packed and presented as all or nothing propositions. At that point, it's very difficult to negotiate details, and as we've seen in the past, it's resulted in congresspeople voting on bills they haven't even read or understood thoroughly. Another way to take this is that these senators were simply playing politics. They voted against something that a Democratic president put forth so that they wouldn't be on record supporting anything Democrat-backed, regardless of whether or not they believed the thing that they were voting against to be an actually good thing that their constituents could benefit from. This is an easy stance to take, especially in cases where the bill is likely to pass even with overwhelming dissent, because it preserves Republican optics while delivering results. Republican leaders, I think by now, are well aware of the fact that their base doesn't always pay close enough attention to what's actually going on to know whether or not the guy taking credit for something actually is responsible for the thing. This reminds me of a conversation I once had with a Trump supporter who was worried that Biden was going to reverse something good that Trump had done, but it was actually Obama who had done the good thing. Trump just took credit for it over 100 times. The added benefit of voting against something deemed to be good is that if the rollout of the initiative goes poorly, which is entirely possible with a project of this magnitude and expense, Republicans can more easily distance themselves from something that didn't work. Anyway, the infrastructure bill covered allotments for improvements to transportation, water, energy, and yes, broadband infrastructure across the country. One of the chief complaints Republicans had against the bill was that it would disproportionately benefit people in cities more than in the country, but that isn't entirely factual. Most Americans living with poor or non-existent broadband access, in other words, the Americans who are set to benefit most significantly from this particular broadband provision, live in rural and very red Republican districts. There's even a specific allotment of 10% of the money to go to the most rural areas. The Biden administration has been vocal about the Republican opposition this bill faced when it was first up for a vote, which I think is a good thing. With another election cycle underway, the current administration needs to remind people of how effective it's been without letting the opposing party take credit for victories that they did not participate in. Also, as far as news coverage goes, the Biden administration tends not to get much of it. The news cycles are more often than not dominated by Trump and his legal woes, which is still news we need to know, but maybe we could do with a little less coverage of it here and there. We're still rewarding salacious headlines with our clicks while scrolling past good news when we see it, frankly, because good news is kind of boring. It doesn't hit those same trigger points the way that bad news and gossip do. Alright, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks.